This is Outdated, and welcome to Outdated Reviews, number 23. And in today's episode, we're going to go back to the well of my role-playing and visit the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. So, really nice art here on the front, right? Nice side here. This is the standard hardback size. I was going to bring in like an example, but I don't think I really need to here. Let's take a look at the back. I still love that you've got the glossy here and the matte here. I don't know why, but I really like that they're consistent with the red swatch here. I think visually these things they have a set design. You know whose they are when you see them on the shelf. Even when you see stuff online made by a bunch of randos, you know, like people like me or whatever, we can do this and make it look like a D&D product, so you right away you know that's a 5e item right there, right? So what we're going to do is take a look at the back here, go through the thing, and I'm going to give you a rating score on this thing. But before we do, let's go ahead and have a word from our sponsors, because I have finally got... What? I don't? Okay, whatever. Let's go and take a look at the book. Entertain and inspire your players. The Dungeon Master's Guide provides the inspiration and guidance you need to spark your imagination and create worlds of adventure for your players to explore and enjoy. Inside, you'll find world-building advice, tips and tricks for creating memorable dungeons and adventures, optional game rules, hundreds of classic D&D magic items, and many other tools to help you be a great dungeon master. When you're ready for even more, expand your adventures with the 5th edition Player's Handbook and Monster Manual. Okay, now you can tell here we've got a flat spine, and I'm looking right there. Could we finally have some stitched binding? Let's find out. No, it's still glued. It's glued binding. That's disappointing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, there's one thing I meant to mention about these, and I forgot. Usually, in all of the D&D 5e releases, there's usually a little blurb down here underneath a disclaimer. I don't know if I can get it to focus on that. I can't. But let me go ahead and take a look at it here. Wizards of the Coast does not officially endorse the following tactics, which are guaranteed to maximize your enjoyment as a dungeon master. First, always keep a straight face and say okay, no matter how ludicrous or doomed the player's plan of action is. Second, no matter what happens, pretend that you intended all along for everything to unfold the way it did. Third, if you're not sure what to do next, feign illness, end the session early, and plot your next move. When all else fails, roll a bunch of dice behind your screen, study them for a moment with a look of deep concern mixed with regret. Let loose a heavy sigh and announce that Tiamat swoops from the sky and attacks. So, some of these are really funny. I think this one's pretty funny. Some of them were pretty stupid, but for the most part, it's a really good gag. And this image, in case you're wondering, is Acererak. I think he was from, I want to say Tomb of Horrors. I think he was the a-hole that made Tomb of Horrors, but I don't know. But so we have the standard table of contents here, and we're going to look at a world of your own, creating a multiverse, creating adventures, creating non-player characters. You have some treasure. The thing about a DM's guide is, there's a monster list there. DM's guides are either really good, or more often than not very good. Now, the art in here I like. Sometimes the art has absolutely nothing to do with what's on the page, but I like it. Now, I really like this as well. We're seeing Daggerford. Daggerford is Forgotten Realms, if I'm not mistaken. That is the official world of D&D 5e. So I'm just kind of skipping some pages around here. It tells you how to create a campaign. For new DMs, I could see this being, helpful to a degree. For established DMs, it's honestly pretty basic information that most of us are way past. But the art's nice. The paper quality is just like it was in the Player's Handbook. It's good. The binding really does bug me. I'm not going to lie. But I have to be honest. We get information on the outer planes and things like that. stuff that if you're new, which is what you'd need this for if you're new, you're probably never going to use that. I'm just skipping some pages. Nice Baba Yaga's hut. Hey, Baba Yaga girl. All right, creating adventures. See, this one, as someone who's read through this thing word for word, it's okay. It's not the best build your own adventure section. It's not the worst, but it's definitely closer to worst than best, honestly. Adventuring Day XP. So it talks about different ways to award XP. You could do it by milestones, either like by the day or by the session or whatever, by the adventure or scenario. You can also do it the old-fashioned way with the killing of monsters. I'm not a fan of that anymore. I used to be, but it just encourages people to kill everything in sight, which is not very fun, and it encourages murder hoboism. You got random charts here for like villain schemes and stuff like that. That's kind of neat. That's fun. And I definitely did enjoy using some of those, mostly for inspiration. I don't think it's the best chart I've seen for that, but it's not bad. Same with the environment. I think the charts and tables are really good. I just think the actual advice is either so basic that it was already in like a box set somewhere recently, or that it's just not helpful. Like, nobody would actually have to use it anytime soon. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit. Goes into building strongholds. That's some old school stuff. The magic items are, like, any DM's guide should have a lot of magic items, right? And it's telling me in general and telling me how to make them. And here's like a roll tables of magic items. You got a lot of them, and that's good. You got pictures of almost all of them. The problem with magic items is the same problem we've had since the beginning. So many of them are like +1, +2, +3, and that's about all it is. And those are not remotely interesting. Not anymore. The old Sword of Flame Tongue. Now, there you go. See, now that's a classic, right? Flame Tongue and Frostbrand both. Let's see. You can use a bonus action to speak this magic sword's command word, causing flames to erupt from the blade. These flames shed bright light in a 40-foot radius and dim light for an additional 40 feet. While the sword is ablaze, it deals an extra 2d6 fire damage to any target it hits. The flames last until you use a bonus action to speak the command word again, or until you drop or sheathe the sword. Frostbrand is similar. It's only 1d6 cold damage, though. And the light's only 10 feet with an additional 10 feet. So, basically not as good is what it boils down to. It's not as good. And it's harder to find. It's a very rare instead of a rare, and yet it's just not as good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Overall, it's not a bad magic item section. Overall. Honestly. I think it depends on how you want to handle magic items in your game world, honestly. Back in the early days, I tried to kind of figure out, as the DM, what the core of each character in the party was. Because at that point, we had gotten through okay, this character's going to die. This character died off in an early adventure. And we knew, okay, these characters are going to be around for as long as we can keep them alive, kind of a thing. I just realized that ring is gross. But either way. So I try to pick magic items that would fit them. And generally speaking, I did not give them just an item right out of the book. Now, there are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, I tried to do something unique or different with it. One guy, a paladin, his was his sword slay, like it was kind of a demon slayer kind of sword, and it spoke to him, like they had a communicative, like in his head, like they had telepathy and all that stuff. But the thing allowed him to like do extra damage to demons and devils and stuff like that, and so it added a little something to the character. Having that, because the sword itself had its own personality and all that stuff. Sometimes we did stuff just to be silly, like we used to have this incredibly unserious campaign where we had a barbarian. Well, okay, back then it wasn't barbarian; he was just a fighter. But we named him Argon Thunderswing, and he ended up finding a Vorpal weapon. And normally I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do the Vorpal weapon thing. But I decided to make it a Vorpal hammer. So that when he hit somebody and it Vorpaled, it didn't like cut their head off. It slapped it off like a golf club with a golf ball hit it off the tee. And it was just funny, right? And that was not meant to be a very serious character. And it wasn't. Because he literally was like, if any of you have ever heard of Gru the Wanderer, the old comic book, where he just had no sense at all and would just jump into a fight with everything he saw right away, that's what this guy was like. He was just there to be silly. Matter of fact, I took him into the Temple of Elemental Evil as a player, and it did not end well for him, which is why it was hilarious. I really enjoyed it. So some of these weapons are pretty cool. So now this is interesting. The official game world is the Forgotten Realms in 5e, right? And as somebody who was around since the beginning of the Forgotten Realms, I mean, that was my game world that I played in and DM'd my longest running groups in. But the Sword of Cass here, that's a Greyhawk thing. So I just find that fascinating. But they've kind of made it so that all those Greyhawk things and have bled over. The section on running the game is honestly, I gotta be honest, it's unnecessary. You're getting this information other places. If you picked up even the starter set, that crappy starter set I reviewed, you already got most of this information. And the other stuff you probably won't need unless you really want to. It has some optional rules here. Some of these are interesting, like proficiency dice, Gotta give it that. But it is optional rules. The thing is, 5e really makes the DM work hard. Probably harder than any version of D&D ever has before. And most of these optional rules make you work even harder. And I honestly don't think it's worth it. Okay, now this random dungeons, I messed with this a few times. And with the exception of one where it got weird, they were decent. They weren't bad. I'm not, or at least at the time I was not a big, let's do a dungeon crawl thing. I'm just not normally going to do that. Right now, I'm having a bit of a nostalgia bug. I might go down that road, but normally I'm not a huge fan. And here you have all the monsters based on challenge rating. Used to be we did it based on hit dice. But that being said, wait, here's some maps. But these maps are just generic maps that you can just grab and use, and that's cool. What would have been nice is if they gave us an adventure to play. They did not. At least I don't think so. Did I miss it? Let's go check the contents again. Because, I mean, like, this is the DM's manual. Maybe it'd be nice if I could DM. Nope. No adventure. That's a missed opportunity. All right. So, again, the art's nice most of the time, the vast majority of the time. Again, I love the formatting. I do not like the binding at all. The price, $50, it's about to go up, but $50 for glued binding and a book that's honestly not that thick. 320 thin paper, thin glossy paper though. The paper's nice. Just thin. How do I feel about the Dungeon Master's Guide? Okay. As someone who has a massive stack of 5e books laying around, and I have to be completely honest, after I read this and messed with the tables a few times, I haven't needed it again. I can sum up how I feel about the 5e Dungeon Master's Guide in 4 words. Tits on a bull. Bulls don't need titties. No player needs this book, and no DM needs this book. Some of the older Dungeon Master's Guides, especially back in 1E and 2E, yeah, they were really good. They were incredibly helpful. This, no, not at all. And it's disappointing, because I wasn't thrilled with the Player's Handbook, but it wasn't bad. I did not like the starter set that much, but the starter set leaves this in the dust. And if you'll recall, I gave the starter set a 7. The Dungeon Master's Guide, 5 out of 10. That's the best I can do. I mean, for completion, it looks nice on your shelf next to the other two. When you got the little red slats going across and the little red things on the bottom with the white. I mean, that looks nice. But you'll probably never open this thing. After you've read it once And that's assuming you even read it cover to cover, like I did, because honestly, there are 320 pages, and I would argue that 275 of them are a waste of my time. And so, I hate to, but the good news is, this wasn't the greatest, but the next D&D book I talk about is fantastic. And I'm so glad that they released that and they did it well. And we'll get to it then. But for now, this gets a 5 out of 5. I hope you enjoyed this review. If so, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Spread the word, get some other people to hop on here. I would love to get some feedback on how I do these things and where my logic comes from. I try to make that clear, but you know. And, you know, it's always open for debate. Like, what's some of the best DM advice you've received in a book? I would say, like, example, Knights Black Agents. Amazing. Its DM section is one of the best I've ever seen. I would say Electric Bastion Land. That one's really, really good. Mostly because of how it explains things very, very directly without making it too complicated. There's a couple more I could think of, but those are just some off the top of my head that really nail it. And in a world where we're getting these that really nail them nowadays, sometimes half-assing it ain't gonna work. So I hope to see you in the next video. This has been Outdated. Peace.